I also want to propose that we think about not just the future in general, but specifically the year 2033. Now, why 2033? First of all, it's in the time span that futurists generally like to think about, 25, 30 years in the future. Far enough away that we can imagine major change happening, close enough that we personally care. So that's one reason. But the main reason is I'll be 100 years old then. So I just think that's a nice round figure to focus on. Now, for the last several years, I've been speaking to local community groups, any community group that'll listen to me, giving a talk that I call the Unholy Trinity Plus One. And I'm not going to give the talk in full today, but I want to outline some of the elements of it. It's my sense that Hawaii, people who live in Hawaii and care about Hawaii, regardless of their ethnic background, if they call it home and want to stay here, need to think very seriously about three things that are usually not thought of or not thought of together, plus one that is almost always ignored in the context of the other three. And I call them the Unholy Trinity because if any of you are Christians or have Christian backgrounds, you know that under certain Christian assumptions, God is three and one. He is both one and three. He has three persons. You can get into all sorts of theological controversies, and I'm sure if I try to explain it, I'll utter a heresy, so I don't want to do that. But what I'm saying is the three things that I want to talk about have that quality of being different elements of the same thing, but often looked at separately. Now, over the last several years that I've been talking about those three things, they have moved farther and farther into our consciousness and awareness, although not many people have put them together. The three that I focus on is the end of oil and the fact that we are already past the halfway point in using up all of the Earth's oil. It's only 100 years we do as a resource. Within 100 years, we've used up half of it. And we've used up the easy-to-get half. We here in Hawaii are 90% dependent upon oil. And the rapid price of oil a couple of months ago, which we were talking about before we came into the studio here, raised our consciousness about this fact that we will be running out of oil and we need to have other alternative energy sources. Now that the price has gone down, even though it's still extremely high, it's sort of faded away from our consciousness. That still remains a high priority to me, to recognize that 40 years ago, when Jan Newhouse and a group of other people warned us that this day would come, we did nothing to prepare ourselves for it except get bigger and bigger gas-guzzling automobiles. And so we are completely unprepared in Hawaii, and it's part of all the wonderful things that you read in the newspaper about the plans we have for moving from oil to something else is going to take 10, 15, 20 years to bring them online before they are able to replace oil. So I think that we have need to look at self-sufficiency very, very seriously, just in terms of the energy situation. Now, for many years, I have been pointing out that the global economic system is basically a gigantic Ponzi scheme, that it's a total house of cards based upon, well, like any Ponzi scheme, whoever gets in there first. I have said since the collapse of communism that communism collapsed because it is unsustainable, but that doesn't mean that capitalism won. It just meant we hadn't collapsed yet. Well, folks, now we have, and you all know that. I hope you all invested wisely smarter than I invested in any event if you're living on your retirement funds, because I believe that we're not in for just an economic downturn. I don't think it's a question of weathering the storm. I think that the global Ponzi scheme has finally collapsed, and it's going to continue to collapse. And the reason oil prices are down is because demand is down, and demand is down because people don't have money to buy it. Even China, even India, even the other places, which still are better off in some ways than we are in pretty bad condition. And then the third thing, obviously, is the environmental issues that we've ignored. Global warming, sea level rise, all of the things related to that. So those are the unholy trinity. And people, when they talk about one, tend to assume there's a solution in the other two. That will take care of our energy by pouring money into alternate energy systems. Well, we don't have money to pour into anything. And therefore, it certainly isn't going to be poured into alternate energy systems and the like. Now, what is the plus one? The plus one is the fact that government is not able to solve our problem. Once upon a time, we used to assume that government was the way in which the community spoke, and that sort of changed into feeling that, well, we should do things on our own, but when we have problems, we look to the government to bail us out. Well, in spite of what you might think government has done in bailing out the very people that got us into this mess, they have not done this. I hear people saying, well, the taxpayers have this awful burden. Folks, it's not the taxpayers. You and me are not going to pay for that. It's future generations that are paying for it. The most unethical, unfair possible behavior. If we ourselves would bite the bullet and restrain our consumption in order to pay for the absolute fantasy we've all had about our global economy, that's one thing, but no, we're not doing it. We're just stealing still more money from the future. And so the government is in a situation where, because of basically 20 years, 30 years of bad-mouthing government, downsizing government, cutting taxes, outsourcing government, even if you have no faith in American government doing anything, believe me, it can't do anything now. It can't do anything positive now. The days of Keynesian solutions to our problems of deficit spending are gone. And this is all good news. This is good news because it means we're going to have to be self-sufficient here in life. It means we're not going to have a powerful hegemonic government looking over us and using us as a major military base for its global expansion. Those days are over. Absolutely blew it, I'm happy to say. And so it gives us an opportunity and an obligation to say, well, what does a self-sufficient Hawaii actually mean? And I have gone around, let's see, I've got several other points, but I think I'll skip over them to just get to the scenarios that I wanted to talk about, and then maybe I can mention some other things. Demographic changes, political, economic changes that are going on. But let me just get to some of the scenarios. One of the things that a futurist does is to make it clear that it's not possible to predict the future.